In today's video, we're going to be breaking down a color grade, how I went from an image looking like this, changed it to this, and then finally ended up with this. Yo, what's going on, guys? Hope you are doing well, starting to live your best life as the world is starting to open back up again. But yeah, as I said, we're going to be breaking down two simple grades today, and they are all based on the LUTs that I have available now down below. And just before we do get into the breakdown, I'm going to show you just what the LUTs can do. So enjoy this little 30-second preview.
Yeah. I get mine, you get yours. Who gon' ride? What you do it for? New design, new accord. Yeah, do or die. I'm gon' win the war, rest assured. I'ma win the war, rest assured. I'ma win the war, rest assured. I get mine, you get yours. Who gon' ride? What you do it for? New design, new accord. Do or die. I'm gon' win the war, rest assured.
Cool, so we're going to start off here with an interview setup that I shot a couple of weeks ago. And this is how it looks straight out of camera. This is Slog3. This is what it looked like once I dropped the files from my memory card to my computer. Now, as you can see, it looks horrible. It's very flat. There's not really much color there. It just doesn't look pleasing to the eye. And essentially, this is what you have to work with when you're going from a log format to Rec 709. Now, in DaVinci Resolve, there's something very clever, which is where you can actually automatically go from a log format to Rec 709. As you can see here, I have a node, which is what these little boxes are called log conversion. Now, as I said, DaVinci Resolve automatically converts your footage from log to Rec 709. So the reason I have this is just to show you exactly what the footage looks like when it is at log format. But if I delete this node, you can see instantly it looks a lot better. This is the Rec 709 image, and if you do not have DaVinci Resolve, then obviously you have to put on a Rec 709 LUT before you can start to make these tweaks. But if you are using DaVinci Resolve and you don't know how to do this, if I quickly show you, go to Settings, Color Management, DaVinci YRGB Color Managed, Wide Gamut, and it will automatically place you to this. And the way to check if this is working is if you right click on your clips here, and you should see an option for input color space. Now that doesn't always appear. It only appears if you have the color, the wide gamut, those settings from before on. So when you go to input color space, it automatically brings you down to S gamut 3, Cine Slog3, and that's exactly the settings that I shot this footage on. Obviously, if you're shooting on a Red, if you're shooting on an Alexa, if you're shooting on Canon, Blackmagic, anything, it will come and refer to the right color profile that you actually shot in. So that is the benefit of DaVinci Resolve. Obviously, you have to go through that process of converting your footage. Cool, so I'm going to be breaking down the node tree, and essentially a node tree is just simply all of these things here of how I actually went from the image looking like this, the Rec 709, which isn't terrible, to this. And this is, more of the final grade that I got after going through these different nodes. So let's go through them one by one. So I always start off with my temperature, and this is essentially where I'm going to balance my image back out. So something that I find in Slog3 is that there is a slight magenta shift, regardless of how I set the white balance in camera. In post, I always find all the footage and the skin tone, just in general, there is a slight magenta shift. Now, I'm not the first person to realize this. I have seen a few things online just about this, and maybe it's a stencil, whatever it is, very easily corrected in post anyway, so it's not too big of a problem, but it's just something I've noticed. So I go and change my temperature and tint just to balance that back out to where I want it to be. And I had that. So you can see instantly, just from going in between, that magenta slightly goes away before, after. That magenta within the whole image is just gone. The whites look a bit more white, his skin tones look a bit more neutral, even though we will fine tune that later on. But yeah, that's just the first initial change. I just like to balance the image back out to its original looking state. Once I balance the image back out, I then go to the primaries, and this is where I slightly just play with my exposure. So if something's too dark, something's too bright, this is where I would change that, bringing the highlights down, raising the shadows up to get all the detail that I want to show. So here, again, I haven't done too much because we've done quite a good job lighting in production. When we were lighting this shot, we did quite a good job. We exposed it correctly, so I didn't have to do too much in the primary. You can see all I've done is just slightly brighten it so it's not too dark of an image. After that, I then add some contrast in, and again, didn't need to add too much because I didn't want it to make it too crunchy, but all the contrast does is just add a little bit of pop. You know, the blacks become blacker, the whites become whiter, all the colors just become a little bit more saturation, a bit more punchy, and that essentially is what the contrast is doing there. After that, I go to my hue. Now, the hue is what I use to change any colors. So as you can see behind him, there is a, you know, just this blue kind of beam coming down. I can't remember what it was causing that, but yeah, we had that, and that is meant to be blue. However, it's slightly coming out purple, and I think that's a mix between, you know, if there was a red light involved or this the general magenta shift that the S-Log gives. So all I did is just change that slightly back to more of a blue tone and not so purple, and that's essentially what I did for in the hue. But yeah, the hue is what I use just to change any colors to bring them back to how I like them to be. So these top 4 nodes, they're essentially bringing the original Rec 709 to the Rec 709 that I want, you know, my own Rec 709 to balance the image to how it should be. So regardless of how I'm grading any project, these 4 nodes will always be my first starting point, just so I am starting at a neutral basis. After that, I go to the skin tones. Now, the skin tones is self-explanatory. I just correct the skin tones to how they should be. And again, as I said, the S-Log3 does slightly have a slight magenta shift in all of the skin tones. So all I did is just slightly correct that. So if I make that full screen, you can see before how red the skin tones are. You know, there is a lot of magenta, a lot of red inside them. So I just kind of neutralize those skin tones to give it more of the natural look. Now, after I've done the skin tones, I then go into lighting. Now, lighting is not something most people do when they're grading, and it's not necessarily needed. But if sometimes, you know, the cinematographer tries to light the subject in a certain way or tries to light the scene in a certain way, and it hasn't completely, you know, come off on camera exactly how the cinematographer, you know, envisioned it, this is something you can do just to enhance that. So I know when we were lighting, I know when we were lighting this, we had the key light coming from this side, hitting OC here on his right side, and then we had a neg board here. But obviously there is, you know, a white wall behind him, which is obviously bouncing some light, and for me it's just a bit hot in this area. So I know this side of the image is meant to be brighter than this side of the image. So all I did is make a graduated filter here. You can see, move that around, simple thing. All it does is just make that side a little bit darker because the key light is up here coming down. So this is essentially just enhancing that look. So if I go back, if I just create a new node so I can select about being there, before and after, it's just slightly adding a bit more contrast to the image. It's, you know, enhancing the cinematography, it's enhancing the lighting that was made from the image. And yeah, that's all I did. It's not, again, not something that's needed on every single clip, but sometimes, you know, you just want to enhance the image through the lighting. Then after that, we have the creative side. So we have 3 layers here of nodes. We have my essentials, we have the corrections from what it should be, and then we have the creative side. Now, I'm not going to break down everything I did to create the creative side of this. I've put them into LUTS just to make this whole process a little bit easier and a little bit quicker, so you can see the end result. And so if I bring these back now, so I first bring this one here. So all this is done, again, neutralize the image a bit more, add a little bit more warmth to it. Go before and after. There's still a little bit magenta still showing, but once I add this in, you can see how blue this gets. You can see just how more neutral the wall gets here. There's that whole purple magenta side is completely gone. And then I add just a bit of teal in the shadows just to complement that kind of warm look. So you know, it's very common, the whole teal and orange thing you see all around. The reason that is common because they are complementary colors that look very good together. But yeah, that's a simple grade of how I got this. So if, again, I show you the Rec 709, that's where we started and that's where we ended up. For me, it's a lot better. It's not more neutral. There's not so much magenta inside the image. I haven't necessarily gone really heavy with the grade because this is an interview. You know, it's not meant to be crazy grade of all these crazy colors, but that is how I've graded this scene. Now, if we move on to the second clip, close this, open that back up here. So this was part of the same trip, again, from a documentary that I'm working on, looking forward to sharing that with you. But if I go to the, the Rec 709, this is where we started. And if I just add that same node, cool. So I've just added the log conversion back so you can see what this looks like straight out of camera. And instantly you see very unpleasing. It's, you know, there's no saturation there at all. There's no contrast. There's no colors really. It just looks horrible. But again, that is how it will look when you first import this from your camera, memory card to your hard drive. And again, very easy to do on DaVinci Resolve. You know, it does it automatically. I've just done this to show you. And there. So straight off the bat, that looked quite good. You know, straight out of camera, that looks pretty good. You know, it's exposed fairly well. You can't really see the sky too much, but other than that, the shot looks good. You know, the colors don't look terrible. The greens look normal. This looks like a good exposed shot. But I then go from that to this, which in my opinion is slightly better, and you know, it gives that more cinematic look. So again, I will break these down one by one of how I went from this to this. Just like before, started off the temperature. Didn't need to do too much here because again, the temperature was quite good. All I did is slightly warm it up just because the environment we were shooting in, I know, was slightly warmer. Next, we go into our primaries, which is what I said before, is where we just re-expose things. So we just correct things from how they should be. If things are overexposed or underexposed, I just correct that exposure. So here I just brought the exposure right down because it was still quite overexposed. So I just brought everything down quite a bit. And just from this, you can start to see the sky come back just a little bit here, just from bringing that whole exposure down. Then I add the contrast in, you know, to fill out the face, a little bit more punch to the colors. After I've done the contrast, I added a new node, which is I called the log sky. The reason I called log is because I used the log wheels in DaVinci Resolve in the high dynamic range section. So I called this the log, and this was to bring back the sky. So this is purely focused on bringing the sky back. So you can see just from that one node, I've gone from this kind of, it looks like a white cloudy day, to adding a little bit more blue into this. So you can see it wasn't necessarily a cloudy day, but it was actually essentially clear blue skies with a little bit of clouds here. Then we go to the hue. I don't think I really changed much on this. On the hue, didn't really have to because the colors were coming out exactly how I wanted them to. The skin, the exact same thing I've been doing for most of the footage from the FX6. Just from looking at it, it's just slightly pushing magenta. So all I did is just add a little bit more green inside that, and a way for you to check if the skin tones aren't actually correct. And you know, because sometimes your eye might be lying to you, might be because of the monitor, whatever it is, or whatever it is you're using. A way to check that, if you just take a section of your footage on the skin, purely on the skin. So I've made a selection of just the skin tones here, and when I now hide that, so all you can see is the selection here, you can see this little glowing mark. That's representing what's on the screen right now, is pushing slightly to the red. Now this white line, that white line is the skin tone line. It's in every, you know, editing software. When you're in the color grading section, when you're using the vector scopes, you can see this white line, and essentially it's like a base guide for where your skin tone should lie. So I can see this is quite magenta, quite red. So all I did was correct that by adding in some greens. And that is what I did here in this one. So you can see I've selected the skin based on the color. When you're using 10-bit footage, this is a lot easier because the colors come out a lot cleaner. But yeah, you can see all I've done is just slightly take out the red out of the image and make it a bit more realistic. And yeah, just put some greens into the image to counteract the red. After that, this was another shot where I added in some lighting. So you can see this crazy drawing around him here. Now, all this essentially did is add in some shadows. So I can see just from this shot, you know, it was obviously shot in sunlight. The sun is coming from this direction. It's hitting it from here. So we want a little bit of shadows here to create some interest in the shot. Now, it's not to say we don't have any shadows there at all, but we can enhance that. You know, we can make it look a little bit more flattering by just adding some shadows there. So you can see instantly, this is why I have this blank layer here, just so I can select about you seeing the drawing. You can see instantly the difference that makes. You know, it's added in that contrast, added in, you know, that more interest and more depth in the image just from having some shadow there. Now, was it difficult? No. Did it take a bit of time? Yes. Just, you know, tracking down, going around his face. Now, I might be thinking, oh, I guess my my key light has died. That's great. Just set that to the side. I guess we'll continue in darkness. So you might be thinking, okay, that's great, you know, making this side, this shape darker, this side of his face darker. How is this going to work when the camera is moving? And in this shot, it does. Now, I purposely left it like this just so you can see, but you can see it's not quite, you know, working correctly. But something you can do on DaVinci Resolve, you can do it in other editing programs, but it's a little bit more difficult. But something you can do is track. So all I need to do is come here, press play, and you can see all these tiny little lines, all these things happening there. So it is tracking the selection I made here to him. You know, it is seeing where it is there, and regardless where the camera is, that's where it stays. So it's not coming out of position. You can see just if we reference here on his chin, it's staying locked to his chin, even though the camera is going back and forth. So that is one of the benefits, again, of DaVinci Resolve, and why I've chosen to use this grade in that way. I've chosen to do this lighting because I know the lighting will stick to him. So I have that darkness to him, and you can just see the difference, because we don't want a flat image where, you know, the skin tones look even across the whole thing, because, you know, there's just no interest, there's no depth. But having this, we now have a dark to light. We have a bit more inside the image. And all I did once I selected it, literally just brought the exposure down. It was on 25, but I brought it down to 14. Where are we going? 14 and a half. And yeah, that is the first two layers. So as I said, we have the correction layer, which I guess technically this should be in as well. This is to balance the image back out. Then we have the look, correcting the look to how I want it. And now we move on to the creative side. So the look I wanted to go for with this, you know, was a very warm look, because this was shot out in Nigeria, where obviously it's very hot. It looks nothing like it does in London. So I wanted to show a difference from, obviously you can't see everything just from this one shot, but I still wanted to show that difference with the grade. So the first thing in the creative look that I have here in this LUT I've created for this is just warming everything up. So you can see instantly the sky has now got a lot warmer. His skin tones are a little bit warmer. It looks like the sun hitting him is a little bit warmer. The green has slightly changed color. Everything has just got that much warmer. And we go from, in my opinion, like a, you know, a typical summer's day in London to something that's a lot more warmer, something with a bit more emotion inside this. To complement this warmness, I've again added a little bit of teal inside the shadows. And as you can see here in his skin tones, I just added that teal look. So we're now producing that teal and orange look, just complementing the warmness that we've added in already. So if I break this down one by one, node by node, we have the temperature, primary, contrast, log, hue, skin, lighting, blank, the warmness, and then the teal in the shadows. And that is how I have gone from this to this. And yeah, that is the grade there. That's pretty much it for the breakdown. Now, I know that was kind of long, kind of tedious, but again, that is the process of color grading, and it's not sometimes the funnest. But if you are a person, you are into color grading, you're into, you know, dialing your own looks, then definitely start to learn color grading, learn as much as you can about color grading. If not, you know, if you're more just trying to get your footage to look as good as possible, as quick as possible, then I recommend just getting yourself some really good LUTs. I do actually want to give myself a little shameless plug here. You know, it feels weird kind of promoting yourself, but I've actually, you know, taken some time out and created some custom LUTs for you to use, so you can actually skip the whole process of color grading and essentially make your footage go from either the Rec 709 or the log look to the final color grade in simply one click. Now, obviously it depends on the footage you're using, but that is why I've made an array of LUTs for different types of footage to make different types of looks for you to download here. You can see from these different types of footage, they are all very different. You know, some, again, a lot warmer, some a lot cooler, some are indoor, some are outdoor. They're all different scenes, but I've created LUTs to suit all of these scenes, so it doesn't matter what it really is you're filming, you have LUTs that can suit that job. So yeah, just link down below. And with that, I have given a free LUT. One is a conversion LUT for you to get from the Slog3 to the Rec 709, and the other is just a free stylistic LUT that I'm just giving because I'm nice. But yeah, that's pretty much all from me. So if you have enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you could drop a like down below. And what else do I say? If you want to subscribe, please do. No, I won't necessarily force you, but you know, if you feel it in your heart, you want to just hit that little red button, I'd really appreciate it. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.